All right. We are live once again here at our YouTube channel for the College Football Players Association. This is once again our Alumni Member of the Month series. I am Jason Stahl. I'm the founder and executive director of the College Football Players Association. And today we have a new alumni member with us for the new year. We're ringing in the new year here, January 2025. And we have Robert Windsor. Robert. We've done it. We've talked so many times. Do you prefer Robert or Rob?
You just call me Rob.
All right, Rob. Here we are. We're ringing in the new year. As always, with any alumni member of the month, Rob, you are a known quantity to a lot of people, and we're going to get to why you've been in the public sphere here as of late. But we want to start this in the way we always start it, which is you're an alumni member of the association now, which means you played college football. So why don't you just walk us through your career? Like start in high school, move to college. And of course, you got your NFLPA hoodie on there. So everybody knows you were a member of the NFLPA as well. So you played in the league. Why don't you just take some time and walk us through that whole career, high school, college, pro?
Yeah, high school. I got some new coaches sophomore year and really good football coaches, and really dedicated myself and just made a decision I wanted to play college football. Worked really hard, had really good year, really good senior year, and ended up getting a bunch of scholarships and ultimately chose Penn State.
What year was your senior year in high school?
2015.
Okay.
And then, after considering everything, I thought that I would have the best chance to make it to the NFL. So at Penn State, because the 4-3 defense, it was between them and Wisconsin. Wisconsin ran a 3-4. So I thought I'd be better off in a 4-3 defense, and that's what it became about. Right as soon as I got those scholarships, because that's what I was working toward. It's like, all right, what's the next goal? It's like, okay, I want to go to college and eventually become an NFL player. So what school is going to give me the best chance to do that? And I decided to go to Penn State. I had a great career there. I was a two-time All Big Ten defensive tackle. And then I ultimately ended up getting drafted to the Colts in 2020 as a 6th-round pick. And then, I was on practice squad my first year and played in 2 games. And then following after that, my injuries – I had to get a hip surgery and groin surgery on both sides, and that ended my career.
When was the last year in the league then?
The 2021 season.
Okay, so pretty
but I was short. On IR. I was on IR that season, so 2020 was my only year.
Okay. So, yeah, I think, a lot of guys, when they go into college ball, they want to get that shot at the league. You did get that shot at the league. I think, the stats are very clarifying, right? For guys who played in D1 football, or I should say Power 4 football now, 10% shot at making the league, right? And so you were one of that 10%. You got the shot that every guy holds out for. But then, of course, average NFL career is 3.5 years, right? And you came in a little bit under that. And, you and I have had plenty of conversations before this, and you really talked about, it was not just injuries. Wasn't really injuries you sustained in the NFL, but rather the sort of buildup of injuries over the course of your career. So why don't you walk, before we get to, the sort of, let's pace things a little bit here. Go back to high school again. So you went to high school in Wisconsin, correct?
Right. Correct.
Okay.
High school. Yeah.
Okay. So walk me through that your career. So the career you just walked us through, high school, plenty of offers, chose Penn State, on the league. For people who really don't understand, walk us through the injuries you had. So start in high school and then take us all the way to the present. How old are you right now?
I'm 27. Going to be 28 in a week.
28 in a week. Happy birthday. All right. So 28-year-old young man. I want you to make sure the viewers really understand, what's the history of your injuries, Rob?
So first injury I had was senior year, getting ready for high school and training camp, and I had a stress fracture in my foot. And there, at that moment, I didn't have any scholarships. I basically got a letter from NDSU, the school in Fargo, North Dakota, the only school that was recruiting me, that basically said, best of luck to you.
Wow.
And then, I got cleared to play by a doctor and played my senior year with my fracture and had an incredible year. First team All-State, probably one of the best players on defense, I'd say, in the state, and ended up getting a lot of scholarships. And that was like really the first time, it's like, hey, if you're going to make it in this game, you're going to need to play through some injuries. And like, that's just a fact. And then I got to Penn State, and it's actually funny I said that because one of the seniors there, Austin Johnson, he actually just played last night on the Buffalo Bills. I'll never forget one of the things he said to me. I asked him for some advice. He's like, acknowledge how your body feels right now because it will never feel the same again. And I didn't know how real that was at the time. So then I end up, freshman year not playing and, having injuries as a young guy, but not as frequently. Start playing as a sophomore. And after that sophomore season, I have my first serious surgery. I have my right shoulder repaired. So my labrum was torn in my right shoulder. And also when the labrum tore, it took a piece of the shoulder bone. So what they did is they anchored down that shoulder and tried to put the bone back in place so it would heal. And then continued playing. Junior year, have an injury in my left knee. And this is actually with Dr. Lynch, where this is where there was some interference, and it was actually brought up in the lawsuit. It was with my meniscus. My knee was swollen. The meniscus was getting in the joint, and I wanted to go see Dr. Lynch about it and ask him about it and get a scan on it. And that's when the coaches interfered. Like, he looked at it, he said, "Yeah, you're good to play, but it could possibly be torn." And coach didn't like that. He told me that it could have been torn. He didn't want me to know that, so that I would continue to play, which I would have continued, which I did continue to play, and I did finish the season. But after the season, I did get it scanned, and it ended up being torn. But yeah, coach was really unhappy about him telling me that it was torn. And then continue playing. Senior year, my left shoulder. So now this is my other shoulder. It starts coming in and out of the socket, kind of like my right shoulder was. And I had a lot of problems getting medical care for this one, because at this point, Dr. Lynch was no longer there, and neither was the original athletic trainer, Tim Bream. I actually had to threaten. So there's one practice. My shoulder was coming in and out during practice, and I wanted to go see the new doctor. And the current athletic trainer wouldn't let me. He said, no, just come in for treatment in the morning, come in for treatment in the morning. And I just kept insisting. I'm like, no, like I really want to see a doctor. Like my shoulder joint's coming in and out of the socket. Like, I want to see a doctor right now. And I actually had to say, I said, if you don't let me see this doctor today, I'm going to drive to Hershey, Pennsylvania to go see Dr. Lynch, who they removed. And then that's when he went and let me see the doctor. And at this point, I was a senior.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, well, throughout my career at Penn State, I would one constant injury is that they kept telling me I was pulling my hip flexor. I had this pain in my groin, and they kept telling me, "Oh, it's just a pulled hip flexor. It's just a pulled hip flexor." And then I get to the NFL, and I keep playing through that, right? Because that's what you got to do to play. You just play with injuries. It's just part of the game. But I ended up finding out in the NFL it wasn't a pulled hip flexor. It was actually my adductor in my groin tearing. So each time it was a pull, I felt the pull. It was actually my adductor and my abdominal muscles tearing off my pubic bone in my groin. So eventually, by the time the first season in the NFL was over, my groin and abdomen was completely torn off my pubic bone. And that was probably the most severe. I woke up in the morning and I couldn't pull my leg inwards. So like if you were gonna pull your legs in like that, I couldn't pull my right leg in, and had to get my groin operated on and get that stitched back together. and my hip as well, hip tearing of the labrum over there. So that kind of ended my career, and all these injuries, they haven't left me. Like, I'm a 28-year-old and I live in a mutilated body, really. Like, I've had my right shoulder repaired, my right hip, my groin on both sides, my left knee, and this left shoulder that I was telling you about that kept coming in and out. I haven't gotten it operated on because I just don't want to get any more surgery, because I still have all this pain with this shoulder, this hip, and this groin. It's just like I just feel like I might as well just deal with it as long as I can until I absolutely need it. Because last doctor I saw said I might need to get it reconstructed. So I'm kind of don't really want to do that. I'm 28 years old and want to try to live in my body as long as I can before having to get more surgery.
It's understandable. I'm very sorry, Rob. I mean, this is, as I know, dealing with former players, on a weekly, daily basis. These are common stories, right? I mean, let me ask you, as a professional, as someone who, played this sport for as long as you did, how common do you think, you're 28 years old, how common do you think your story is from someone who played high level college football, Penn State, then went on, had any type of pro career in his late 20s? You think you're the norm?
I think there's a lot of people, a lot of guys like me, because the guys you hear about are the guys having a lot of success. And the guys who are having a lot of success are the guys coaches are really looking out for. Like, for example, when we were at practice at Penn State, Saquon Barkley wasn't practicing during the spring. He was in the hot tub while we were all going out and knocking heads. Like, they obviously, as they should, they take care of the other guy, the really, really role players. But the guys you don't hear about, right? The guys that are in practice, they're some of them are like hitting dummies, and their bodies just get put through the ringer, and you don't really hear about it. Those aren't the guys you're hearing about, and I think it's important to speak up for them.
I do too. I mean, I think this is what a players association can do, is level a playing field and say everybody deserves equal protections, right? Everybody deserves the same care, right?
And
I think this would go ahead. I don't want to interrupt. You go.
Yeah, I think see, it takes players. Players need to speak up to protect other players, and that's why I'm doing this, because the fans don't know what I know. And as a player that's drafted and has been through what I have been through, I know what is going on. And I say, hey, this is really, really bad. And there needs to be, in a sport so violent where the injury is 100%, there needs to be someone looking out for these kids. And especially in a business where hundreds of millions of dollars are being made, these are 18-year-old kids, right? These aren't grown men. These are 18-year-old kids that are easily taken advantage of and that are going to listen to authority, right? So when I was a senior and having my shoulder issue, I was older, so I knew better. And I would threaten to go see Dr. Lynch. Said, hey, either you let me see this doctor or I'm going to go see Dr. Lynch. Well, I would have, 18-year-old freshmen come to me and say, hey, Rob, they're not letting me see the doctor. What am I supposed to do? And I would tell them, hey, you need to say you're going to go see Dr. Lynch. But they're 18-year-old, they're not going to speak back to coach like that. They're not going to speak up to authority like that. And there needs to be a group standing up for these kids so that they're not getting taken advantage of. And as much as these coaches want to act like they're a father figure to these kids and they care so much in their family, you got to keep in mind they're making these insane contracts, $70 million contracts, and they're willing to do a lot to make sure they get that contract money.
Well said. Protections. We focus so much on this at the Players Association, like in our platform, protecting players, getting them independent medical care. That's our platform plank number one. You're wearing, obviously, the NFLPA hoodie there, right? And so I think this is what, when we talk with players, current players, we say, hey, you want to go on the league? Oh, yeah, I want to go on the league. And I said, well, the first thing you're going to do when you get there is you're going to learn you're part of a union and you're covered by a collective bargaining agreement and you have protections in place. Did you feel like And I've heard varying stories here at the pro level, but you and I haven't talked significantly about your story. Did you feel like you were better protected as a professional NFLPA, and to what extent did the Players Association play a role in that, if it did?
Well, you just have more rights, right? Like the physicians on the team are going to be manipulated towards covering up injuries and getting you playing. So it's just like a given. Whenever you get injured in the NFL, you always go and get that second opinion to protect yourself. Because the doctors with the team have the team's interest at heart, and that's why they're there. And you need someone looking out for your interests. And they say, NFL is not for long, but these injuries, yeah, and they're right. It is not for long, but these injuries are for life. Right? Football for me is done, but these injuries I have are not, and it affects the way I live my life every day.
How so? I mean, what is your, I think people really need to understand this. I feel like I understand this now after 7 years of doing this, in part because I've talked with so many former players. I didn't play the game myself. I don't know what it's like. 28 years old. What is your life like now? Like, you
There's
say, yeah, you already
never a
feel
day
it.
I'm not in pain. There's never a day I'm not in pain. My life has become, a lot of it has been come about managing my pain and learning how to live life in this body. So that's just the reality of it. And you just kind of have to learn with it, learn how to live with it. It's like you do what you can, but it is what it is, and it's tough and it's hard. But at the end of the day, you get up and you put one foot in front of the other. Like I'm in pain sitting here right now. Like there's things right now in my body that are aching, and that's just always how it is. And when I'm not in pain, it's a good day, right? Whenever there's a day of less pain, like that's a good day for me.
I appreciate you sharing that. Foot, shoulder, other shoulder, knee, meniscus, abductor, groin ripping, labrum. Like you narrated all this. The one thing that was absent here, I just want to ask you about, because sometimes I think it gets so normalized within football that then players don't mention it to me. What about concussions?
Yeah, well, see that I'm sure I did suffer plenty of them, and you don't really know the outcome of that. Mentally, I feel great. I feel strong. I'm sharp, but I just I feel it on my body more than anywhere else.
How many? I don't want to pry. I mean, you've been so honest with me over our months of talking here, and how many concussions do you think you sustained over the course of your career?
Hundreds.
And the fact that you didn't mention it to me in your narration of your injuries, why do you think that is? You sustained hundreds of concussions, yet you didn't mention it to me.
I think that's just something you don't realize. It's not something you feel, right? Like this pain in my body is something I feel all the time. It's so I guess it's like not as sensory, right? But my body is more my senses, and I'm able to feel it more, and it definitely affects me every day.
Thank you for sharing all that, Rob. I hope we're going to transition. You've mentioned Dr. Lynch, you've mentioned this court case, and so I want to transition to that now. I want this. I'm glad this occurred at the first part of the interview, because I think that people very often don't get it, and you have taken so much heat for what we're about to talk about, which is participating in this case. You've taken heat from the Penn State fan base, who, let's say, don't take kindly to players speaking on behalf of other players, right? And
Yeah,
you standing up for those who are weaker, right? Like, I
right.
mean, what you did for the freshmen when you were a senior, what you did in this case. And so I really want to just say here before we transition how much I commend you for doing what you're doing, because I know you suffered quite a lot. You narrated your suffering in terms of your physical and mental ailments, but also just you've suffered a lot in terms of when you stick your neck out in the way you have, you're not welcome back at your former program, correct?
No, but I'm okay with it. I think at the end of the day, I took a step back and I really thought about everything that happened and how it happened. I'm like, man, that is really corrupt what happened. When I came in, we had a completely separate staff. We had a different athletic trainer and a different doctor than when I left. And the athletic trainer left, and coach brought in his own athletic trainer. And I saw how drastically that changed everything. So when I first got there, our athletic trainer was Tim Bream. And he kind of acted like a shield between me and the coaches. And he would go to bat every day with these coaches. That our head strength coach, Dwight Galt, would be in his office every day arguing with him why these injured players should be playing. He didn't care. He went to war with them every day. And then when he left, Coach Franklin ran the interviews about which trainer to bring in, which should never be done by coach. But he was able to do it and basically try to get a competitive advantage by bringing in a guy that wouldn't disagree with him. So then I saw the new trainer, Andy Mutnam, come in, and the culture in the training room completely changed. It went from when you get injured, you come in and we get a plan to get you healthy and back on the field. And then when Andy Mutnam came in, it was, we're going to try to not diagnose injuries, try to keep you on the field as long as possible. And then when you are injured, we're going to get you back on the field as quick as possible. Like, you're never fully recovering. Once Andy got there, it's like, you're back on the field as soon as you can, even while you're injured. And then Dr. Lynch didn't like that. And Dr. Lynch started speaking out about what was happening, and they ended up removing Dr. Lynch. Shortly after, Dr. Lynch came forward as a whistleblower. They made up an excuse saying, oh, it's because he doesn't live on campus and he's not here, which was complete BS. It's because he came forward and called out coach for what just happened. And then they brought in another doctor. And I had to sit back and think about what happened. I'm like, wow, they really just removed our entire staff so they could manipulate medical decisions. I'm like, this is horrible. And people need to understand how serious this is. These are people's lives. And for me, connecting those dots, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to testify. I don't care what anyone thinks about me or what they have to say or how upset fans are, even former players and teammates. Like, this is something that's so serious that people don't understand, right? Unless you're living in my body and you can really understand what it's like to live like this, you don't understand how serious it is.
Very well said, Rob. Very well said. I want to back up just for viewers who don't know the Penn State situation, don't know Dr. Lynch's case, kind of lay the groundwork here, just pull out some threads here of what you just walked us through. When we talk about independent medical care and the need for independent medical care for college football players, it's our first platform plank. We talk about second opinions. Why do we talk about this? We talk about it because there are coaches, not all coaches, but there are coaches who drastically influence the medical care that players receive, right? And so the 2019, for viewers who aren't unaware, 2019 study was done that showed 36% of athletic trainers reported that coaches influence the hiring and firing of medical staff. Okay. They are not supposed to do this, but this was your exact experience at Penn State. You came in, you felt like you had good medical care under the folks that were there, Dr. Lynch, Tim Breen, right? You said these people cared about players. They cared about players getting well. These are the exact kind of medical professionals you would want in place. Your coach, your former coach, James Franklin, and we should also name names here and say the athletic director, Sandy Barber, who allowed him to do this, right? Because there are controls over coaches. It's the athletic director, and the athletic director can choose to exercise authority over the head coach. She chose not to. So we have James Franklin then, who exercises a direct hand in the hiring of the new staff, of the new medical staff. And that's where you saw this shift. Okay.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah. And that's where you saw the shift, and you saw him being involved to cater it to how he wanted it.
Okay. Which meant primarily
possible. And then when they can't play anymore, then you can kind of get rid of them, right? At the end of the day, you got to see it as a business, because that's what it is. So they want to get as much out of the players as they can, and then when they're no good anymore, you get rid of them and you get a new guy.
But that's not what you're told. Yes, and you and I both know this is an absolute reality throughout much of college football. Yet that is not the vision you and your family was sold on when you got recruited, correct?
No, not at all.
What was the vision you were sold on when you were a recruit, trying to decide
That
what school to go to?
it's family, and this is for life, and that's all recruiting is sales. So at the end of the day, you got to see it as a business. So yeah, you get recruited, you get sold on one thing, and you get there and you find out the harsh reality of it.
All right. The harsh reality then is that you had these good doctors, they got removed. Now, Dr. Scott Lynch, he's now an advisor of the College Football Players Association. There's a YouTube interview I did with him as a new advisor that's uploaded on our YouTube channel. I really encourage viewers to go and watch that YouTube as well and make sure they understand the ins and outs of Dr. Lynch's case from his perspective. But just for the unknowing viewer here, after Dr. Lynch was fired from his position of head team doctor of the football team, and players like Rob then started to feel like they were not receiving independent medical care. They were receiving medical care that was pushed by the coach. Dr. Lynch then brought suit against multiple people and entities, right? Hershey Health was the one that continued to go forward, but he brought the suit against James Franklin. He brought it against Sandy Barber. He brought it against Penn State University, basically saying he was fired because he was trying to provide correct medical care for players. Now, this case is still being litigated, but Dr. Lynch did win a jury trial in the state of Pennsylvania with a bunch of Penn State fans on the jury. I think people need to understand that. He won a jury trial, a $5 million judgment. That judgment now stands. It is going through appeal, as are other aspects of the case. When I interviewed Dr. Lynch, though, he was, I think, hesitant to talk about players because he didn't want to breach confidentiality. He didn't want to talk about what do we mean here when we talk about players not getting independent medical care? You've given us an example from your own life, the treatment of your knee injury, for instance, the treatment of what ended up being your labrum. What other example, like really try to bring this home for the viewers? What does this mean in
Yeah,
practice at
so
an everyday level?
interfering with medical decisions. What does that mean? So basically, coach manipulating the trainers and doctors to inform athletes not to the fullest extent so they continue to play. Or not even just underplaying their injuries. So for example, I had a friend that had a fracture in his leg. He had this huge lump on his shin, and he kept asking to get x-rays for months. So they kept telling him, no, it's just shin splints. It's just shin splints. So they never are at fault because they don't know what it is. So they don't want to get the x-ray. They keep telling him it's shin splints. Eventually he demands one. He gets the x-ray. His leg is broken and he needs to get surgery. All right. So that's what an example of interfering with medical decisions is, not giving the players right. If a player comes in and wants to get an x-ray, he should be able to get one, no questions asked. And then also for another example is like with my knee. I know my knee was swollen, my meniscus was torn, but I could still play. And Coach Franklin told Dr. Lynch to not tell me that it could possibly be torn and that it was okay. So just even because he didn't want me to not play. I mean, just the fact that he doesn't want me to be fully informed. I still would have played, but I should have been fully informed about my body. I think that's something that comes down to the player. Get educated and know what's going on with your body and then make the choice.
How might a players association play a role in that? Like, because again, our first platform plank, independent medical care for college football players. Doesn't matter if you're Saquon Barkley or if you're someone nobody's ever heard of on the Penn State team, right? How can we stop this in real time? Like, how could a player? I have ideas, but you as a player, what would be your idea? And like, if you had a player rep,
Well, it needs to be the same as the NFL. We need to have a
tell
players association, right? It needs to be a group of players standing up for players because, obviously, like we saw on the internet, fans don't care. And as I experienced, coach, maybe he does care, but not as much as receiving his contract money. That's the most important thing. So the only people who really do care are the players because we know what it's like and we've been through it ourselves. So what it's going to take is players coming together and standing up for each other.
Well said. All right, let me ask you a little bit of tougher question here. You most guys, when they get done with college football, they're they become boosters for their former program, right?
Mhm.
They go back, they oh, here's some recruiting visit. We need some alum who played in the league. Rob, come on back, right? Here, come and do this podcast. And then you get preferential treatment for that. Maybe you're considered for a position at the highest level, right?
Mhm.
Maybe it's just, oh yeah, you get to come through that field house whenever you want, right? You're welcome to kind of walk
Yeah.
through and do whatever. You did a bit of that. It seemed like, okay, maybe Rob's going to go that route too. And
Yeah.
then you made a switch, Rob, which you had to know. You had to know among, I don't want to say all fans are the same, but you and I both know among those rabid fans who just care about wins, they were not going to be on your side. And you knew when you became a part of this case as a player who testified as a witness against his former coach and his former school, boy, you knew you were going to be in for the treatment online. You knew you were going to get dragged, and you knew that you were giving up all that an alum of a program like Penn State is going to give up when you knew you were going to get blackballed from going back. And that's a barrier that we encounter in organizing the Players Association is players know if you step out on a limb, man, you might get blackballed too. Why did you do it, Rob? I gotta ask.
Well, first of all, because I don't really care what other people think. Like I'm so solid in who I am and what I believe in that people hating me online doesn't really faze me. And then another reason that led me to do this was so I was right. I was going and visiting all these universities, exercising my network, considering getting into coaching. Decided I didn't want to do that, and I got into business with some teammates in real estate development. And then I saw some really corrupt things happening there too. I saw these players getting taken advantage of because they don't understand business. And I learned very fast and understood what was going on at this company. And I saw these players basically getting robbed. Very very bad business practices. So then I took a second to step back and think, it's like, wow, these players are getting taken advantage of at the college level medically, and they're pushing through their injuries of hopes to make it to the NFL and make this money because that's the goal and that's what motivates you. And then they get this money, and then you have all these shady businessmen proposing all these investments, trying to take it from them. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just like no wonder so many guys don't make it. They get taken advantage of, and there's a whole network of dark business around taking advantage of athletes. And you see it now too with NIL. There's these
Mm-hmm.
guys who represent these players, and they're taking 10% of their contract of these 18-year-old kids. These kids don't know any better. And there needs to be a group, a players association, to start looking after players financially, medically, and all other areas. So it's and the only way it's going to happen is player led, right? Like I said, fans aren't going to do it for you. Coaches
Mm-hmm.
aren't going to do it for you. It needs to be player led. And that's when I decided. I said, okay, I don't. I'm going to burn my bridge with Penn State, and I'm going to speak up about this because this is important and this needs to happen, and it needs to come from former and current players.
Well said. Well said, Rob. Former players here, because I think there is an element of, it can be so different. I talk with someone like you who's 28. You look back on the previous 10 years, and man, you can just narrate everything that happened to you, all the ways you got taken advantage of, the ways you tried to stand up for yourself, maybe times you didn't stand up for yourself. And, I go talk with a 19-year-old who's like in the midst of it. And it can be so hard to give them that type of clarity that you're going to have 10 years down the line, right?
Yeah, and you don't know when you're going through it, right? You're focused every day on perfecting your craft to play at the level that these guys play at. It needs to be an obsession where you don't think about anything else and you're focused in. And that makes it really easy to take advantage of you because
Yep.
you don't know anything else but football.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't really until after my career and I was able to reflect upon it. I'm like, wow, that really was crazy how they replaced our entire medical staff and brought in their own, and then how the medical culture completely changed. And one thing I want to mention that we didn't mention is
Yeah.
talking about how the culture changed after that medical staff. When they brought in the new athletic trainer, they started doing this award called Lion of the Day. And
Oh,
the Lion of the Day was the player who was practicing with the most severe injury. So at the end of practice, they'd announce, "Oh, Rob's practicing with a broken hand. Clap it up for him." I'm just like, why the hell are we clapping it up that I have a broken hand? Like, why are we applauding that? So that culture really changed too, and it's just like reflecting back on that, it's like, it's not good.
That is not good. You have not shared that story with me. I mean, I think there's a level of sadism about it. I mean, when you're promoting playing with excruciating injuries, when you're valorizing that, glorifying it, when we know it can be different, we know it can be different. All right. One thing I wanted to talk to you about that we haven't talked about in a while is back in the summer of 2022, the College Football Players Association was invited by Sean Clifford, who was the quarterback of Penn State at the time, to come into State College and talk with players for about a week in the middle of July, um, in order to try to organize players and form our first chapter at Penn State. I don't believe I've made public at this point, but one of the reasons was that summer, players had been told by James Franklin that there were new loosening of NCAA restrictions that effectively allowed them to practice more in the summer than they had practiced previous summers,
Mhm.
including doing things like two-a-days, which had been banned for a while. And so Sean was telling me this before I went out, and I was disbelieving of a lot of it, quite frankly, because there was no such loosening of NCAA restrictions, and two-a-days were continued to be banned. And so I was shocked when I went out there, because I went out there and I talked with a lot of players, and I ended up talking with the whole team my last day there, giving a presentation about what a players association can do for them. And again, summer 22, before I started giving my presentation, when players found out who I was and who I represented and what we were trying to do, there was a universal round of clapping before I even started my presentation. So
Mhm.
for anybody that doesn't think that Penn State football players want to support a players association or need a players association, they're dead wrong. And also, the number of players is, I want to support you here with evidence I have to say you're correct about everything you're saying. The jury agreed with everything you're saying. This continues to go on at Penn State and other places, but it's Penn State specifically. I have an example of about 15 players who told me similar stories to what you're telling me, that
Mhm.
when that new staff came in, that they were rushing guys back and not properly treating injuries. None of that can possibly surprise you, correct?
No, it's I mean, it's so real, and just the fact that those guys were clapping and all and excited to have you, just the thought of unionizing and getting, the protection they need. Yeah, they were ecstatic because it's miserable going through practice like that and going through like that, and you're in pain and you're just pushing through it. It's just like, how long can you endure it before you collapse? So I know they were just ecstatic about it, and, how did it you wanna share with how it went? How did it get shut down?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is out there. It's pretty public. If people go to our media page at the website, they can find articles there. But I think this is, again, summer of 22. Kevin Warren was the commissioner of the Big Ten at the time. He's now the president of Bears, the Chicago Bears in the NFL. Um, Pat Kraft is the athletic director at the time. He's a new athletic director at Penn State. They also got a new president, if I remember correctly. And yeah, it was the powers that be when they found out. I was there, and again, like some places we go and I talk with current players, and actually coaches and administrators know I'm there because they feel comfortable. They think we don't have anything to hide. If you want to come to talk to our players, talk to our players. I was specifically hidden at Penn State because guys did not want coaches to know we were there, did not want administrators to know we were there talking with them
Yeah.
because they were afraid. And so at the very last moment in the all team presentation on my final 8th day that I was there, a strength and training coach came in and the kind of jig was up, and he alerted basically the entire coaching staff and the
Mhm.
administrative staff. And then Kevin Warren, very much behind the scenes, worked to shut things down. I think, if I'm being honest, and again, I've publicly written about this, I think Sean Clifford at that point, our main leader, I would say he got scared, but also Kevin Warren made him an offer. Kevin Warren said, okay, we're going to create this committee at the Big Ten level. It's an advisory committee of football players to come and report to me. Let me know what you guys need. Let me know what you're not getting. And I think Sean looked at the two situations: nascent Players Association still trying to get its first chapter, and the CEO of the Big Ten, who's going to kind of be able to move things.
Well, that's
right?
something to consider too, right? Think about how hard of a situation that is for Sean, and then he could potentially be giving up his spot and everything he worked for in his career in the NFL. And I think that's why it's so important for players that are done, like myself, to come forward and talk about this, because I'm not going to lose anything.
Yep.
Right? Sure, I already lost my connections to Penn State, cool, but I'm not going to lose my career. My career's done, and I've accepted that, and I've moved on. So I think that's going to be the most challenging part, is getting current players to play, because they've already sacrificed so much and they're about to reap the reward. So I think it's really important for former players to come forward.
Okay, I agree with you. And that's why we have so many former players like yourself as alumni members who are directly involved with what we're doing, trying to build the Players Association. Yet, let's return to Sean. I hope Sean watches this. I harbor absolutely no ill will towards Sean Clifford in terms of.
I love Sean. Sean's a great guy, and he cares about doing well by his teammates, and that's why you were there in the first place.
That's why I was there. Sean invited me because he cared
he would
about
have never
his
invited
teammates.
you if he didn't think that this was wrong and there needed.
You got it, 100%. Okay, and that, I believe, is still true to this day. But Sean was put in an unbelievable situation for someone like him in his last year of play to try to figure out what to do. And I harbor absolutely no animosity towards Sean Clifford. He did so much more than so many players. Now, let me ask you this though, Rob, because you said where the play, and this has been true with the building of any Players Association, whether it's the MLB Players Association, the NFL Players Association, is that when you get to that moment of breakthrough, it's like you get the rank and file. You get the people that no one have heard of, because they're the ones who are most going to benefit by the establishment of a Players Association. But the quote unquote star players, the most influential players, those are always the hardest to get, because it was like you said, like Saquon Barkley came and testified on behalf of James Franklin in that case. But you just said, it's like, well, what if those players are getting preferential treatment from the system as it is? How can you then get them to say, yes, you should build a Players Association too, if they are benefiting so much by what is currently going on in the system?
It's just going to come down to extremely high character, which it's going to be even more difficult to get to them, because it's like you said, they are already getting the preferential treatment, so they don't see anything that's wrong. And then also, they have so much more to lose.
Yes,
right? They're getting paid more. They have more opportunity. They have everything lined up. They're not going to go out of their way and ruin that, and nor should they. It's just going to take collectively the guys that aren't in that position, and the guys that are in that position. It's just, if you are to get one, it's going to have to come from a point of extremely high character. Right. Okay. It's not like a selflessness.
I know. And that's tricky. It's tricky because think about all you talked about in the course of this podcast, how much you risk, how much you put up with in terms of injury as a college football player. If you get to the precipice of that and there's a damn good chance you're going to get drafted in the league.
Well, and you got to think about why is Coach doing this in the first place? Because he wants to get his contract money. He wants to keep building his career, right? So if someone's doing bad things in order to get more money and move up in their career, it's not that hard to do nothing to do that as well, right? Because these players, they're not necessarily doing anything wrong or doing anything bad. They just don't have to do anything at all because they're already in position.
Yeah. All right, this has been great. Anything from your perspective we didn't cover?
I think we covered everything. I guess one thing, I kind of thought about with this whole situation, I thought about the NFL lockout, right? Because there's players and they have, their bargaining rights, and the league has its own too. And when they couldn't come to an agreement, there was a lockout. And right now, there's nothing like that to represent the players, right?
Hmm.
Basically, the league just gets to say, hey, this is how it is. And I really hope, this reaches former players. And I hope they can see the message and see the problem. And also current players. My message to current players would be to, with the transfer portal and everyone, transferring all the time, I'm sure there's connections on different teams. I
Hmm.
think it would be extremely powerful if players from different teams started coming together to do this, because it's different if one team just does it, not a big deal. But if multiple teams can come together and take action, then we have something really serious going on, and we can make some good change and protect players for the rest of their lives, right?
Well said, Rob. Man, that is such a good place to end on. I want to really here at the end just commend you and the courage you've shown. Um, you have nothing to gain doing what you're doing, man. And you and I both know it. And it was, you talk about high character, man. You have high character. And I want to make sure people really understand that and also understand that what we're building in the College Football Players Association is designed to take in people like you who are whistleblowers, who are people who are willing to say, you know what, this is wrong and it needs to be said and something needs to be done about it. And so, for former players out there who do want to tell their story, who do want to do the same thing you're doing right now, man, I really urge them to come forward and come check out our website and www.cfbpa.org. Okay, that's it. Thanks so much, Rob.
Thanks for having me on, Jason. Keep doing what you're doing,
Absolutely.
man. Keep
Yeah,
fighting
man.
this fight.
Heck yeah. All right. This is the College Football Players Association podcast. This is our Alumni Member of the Month series. I am Jason Stahl. I'm the founder and executive director of the College Football Players Association. Today we had on Robert Windsor. Rob is an Alumni Member of the Month for January of 2025. Y'all take care.